A lot of people worried that AI is going to come along and take their jobs away, not just in software engineering, but in all sorts of places. I suppose I feel two things predominantly. One is that new technology has always come along and taken people's jobs away. We don't have tanners anymore. We don't have knocker-uppers. We have alarm clocks.
How old are you, Paul?
Well, I'm trying to use an extreme example to make my point.
Let's talk about team leadership then. You're writing a book that is, you think you can lead a team. What's the topic of that, Paul?
So I've written the book, and I think explaining the topic is probably the best way to do that is probably to describe how the book came about. And about 12 months ago now, a senior engineer on another squad, not my squad, another squad, was leaving the company to go and be a team lead elsewhere. And in a moment of either brilliance or more likely ego, I decided I was going to give him some pieces of advice. And one of the things that I struggled most with team leading was letting go of doing the work and facilitating, which is a horrible word, but facilitating others in doing the work. So that was my first bit of advice. I said to him, remember that doing the work isn't the only way to add value. And we, as team members, we sometimes have friction with other people on our team. So I pointed out that he should be picking his battles rather than fighting every small point. And I also pointed out that it's important to talk to your team every day, and that sort of thing. And then there were just some of these themes, and they expanded a little bit for the book. And then I thought, well, I wonder if this can help some other people. So I thought I'd start writing some articles and I'd do a presentation. We had NordevCon was coming up, so I thought I'd write a presentation for that. And I did write a presentation, and I ended up giving it at the Haven conference, the Haven, a company I work for. And I gave it at the ACCU conference. I gave it online in a few places, and I gave it at Nordev, and it seemed to go down quite well. And I was writing articles for my blog, and then I thought, well, hang on a minute, is there a book here? Could I perhaps write 20,000 words and publish a book, because I've always wanted to publish a book. When I first thought about writing a book, I never thought for a moment it would be about people. My career hasn't really been full of people moments, if you know what I mean, being a software engineer. But yes, I thought I'd be writing a technical book or something like that, but I've written a book on team leadership. We went on holiday in the summer, so the first few days of August I finished the book, and then through the process of getting it edited and finally got it out in the middle of October, after fighting with Amazon KDP for quite a while. I just in case I brought one up with me, so I can show you one that's there.
Awesome. That looks great. So 12 months from the first inkling that maybe there's something here to getting it done is pretty impressive.
Thank you.
I totally agree. For so many of us, and guilty myself, letting go and realizing that you now got to deliver through other people, not through you doing more and shouting at other people to do more, is a major step that I think so many of us, have to learn the hard way, really. We struggle to realize that. Even if somebody tells us, it's still so hard to change that mindset, isn't it? From builder to kind of guide. Then I should pick you up, given what we just talked about, of ACCU.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't we call it ACCU these days?
Yeah, ACCU, yeah. We're going to stick with ACCU. Let's go with ACCU.
Cool. So why do we both call it ACCU? Let's go down that diversion for a while.
Because that's how we encountered it. So what was this? Early 2000, I think.
I think even before that, possibly even 99.
Possibly. Well, I wasn't working in 1999, and I found out about it after I started work. So it would have been for me at least 2000. Okay. And yeah, it was written down, I suppose, like ACCU, and the logo may have even said the Association of C and C++ Users underneath. So yeah, it's always been the ACCU for me.
Yeah, likewise. And it was great for that, wasn't it? Because I think I joined in 1997. I first got exposed to it while I was still a student at uni. By the time I started working in 98, it was great because it got me exposure to people like John Jagger, Kevin Henney,
Yeah.
I think Deep Markle, Herb Sutter was like quite often speaking at the conferences. A chance to learn from some amazing people and pick up so much. It was. I think we were incredibly lucky to start our careers around that time and have access to those people.
Yeah.
And have them also active on the mailing list as it was back then, before social media. Yeah, and I think we were both very technically focused at the time and very focused on C++. So I don't think either of us probably ever saw leadership in the future.
Not back then, certainly. Although after I joined and I then changed jobs, I was the first developer in on a new project, and within about 6 to 12 months, they started hiring other engineers and wanted me to lead them. So it's more like managing then, and I started bringing it back to the book, but I talk about it in the book about it was more like sort of dictation rather than leading, and they hadn't really learned the people skills back then. But no, I didn't think I would be writing a book on leadership then, certainly.
Although maybe it shouldn't be much of a surprise, because I do seem to remember you being active in creating a community within Accu for junior developers and a way to learn, and trying to Accu Mentors, wasn't it, that you drove the creation of?
Yes, mentored developers. Yeah.
Yes, that was it.
So one of the reasons I was so pleased to join the to join Accu, that I was working in small companies in Yorkshire, or companies with very small engineering teams. So it was difficult for me to learn from other people. So being able to be part of a community was great. And I learned a lot through books, and I thought other people could perhaps do the same. So I managed to convince the committee to buy the books for the mentored developers. And then one of the more experienced members of the group would go through each chapter with us, and we'd do the exercises and learn bits and pieces. And it seemed to work quite well at the time. It's a long time ago now, though.
Yeah, it is a while back, isn't it? But I do remember it being, I think, one of the most successful things that was set up. So that's awesome. So coming back to leadership then, how did you end up in leadership after that initial venture into it?
So I've always been sort of fairly senior in the team, often the leader of the team, if you like, but it was less pronounced. And I decided to move jobs under COVID. I wasn't happy in the place that I was, so it's one of the only times that I've left a role without somewhere to go. And I'd accepted a role, another company, I can't remember what they were called, but something was giving me cold feet. But there was this guy, Steve Cresswell, who's my manager and now at Haven, or my leader now at Haven, as we call it. And he was quite persistent that he wanted me to go and work for them. I think he'd seen me speak at a conference or something along those lines. So because I got cold feet with this other company, I decided to give Haven a go instead. And they put me straight into an existing squad, where I wasn't the leader, somebody else was, but they were going to spin off yet another squad from that, which I was going to lead. And that's what I did. It took me quite a while to stop trying to write the code all the time and get other people to do it. But I got there in the end, and we achieved a lot of stuff in that squad. And then I moved to the one that I'm in now, where I've been getting on for 2 years now. So we're now are now involved in the squad that takes the money at the end of the process of buying a holiday. Basically, it's called the checkout squad. And again, we do lots of things. So many things go through checkout at the end of booking a holiday.
So we talked a little bit about leadership and management. What's the difference to you? What is leadership versus the management?
Leadership is obviously about helping people move in the same direction to achieve a goal that you're all invested in. Whereas managing is more about sort of organising things on spreadsheets and budgets and making sure everything is in the right place. Rather than trying to achieve a goal, the same goal with a group of people.
Yeah, I tend to think of Derek Sivers' TED or TEDx presentation, I don't remember which, on how to start a movement.
Yes.
What I like there is his focus as you're a leader when somebody decides to follow you.
Yes.
Yeah. So I pull from that leadership is something you do. You start going in a direction. You maybe try and inspire other people to go that way, but you become a leader when they start following you and coming along on the journey with you. Well, as you say, management, I think more of that spreadsheet is more of how do I coordinate things? How do I coordinate some resources, whether that's cash or compute, or some other things that we need to do that, and how do I coordinate people as a team or an organization or a social group to do something, and how do I structure the processes around that to enable that to happen.
That's really interesting, especially when you're placed into a team as the leader rather than sort of standing aside and going, everyone follow me, and those who want to come. And certainly there are some challenges in that respect, because not everybody wants to go the way that you want to go. So yeah, certainly challenging.
Absolutely. So what do you think have been the most common mistakes that a new leader will make when they're put into that situation?
So I think you need to go back to not letting go, and remembering to delegate. I think that's probably the biggest mistake that most leaders make. I also think not listening to their team, thinking that they, as the person in charge, if you like, knows best and should tell everybody what to do, and which date library they should use, or which is the right way to lay out a repository, or all of those sorts of things. It's about listening to your team and bringing them along on the journey with you. Sometimes you do get to a point where consensus or agreement can't be made, or the wrong consensus or agreement is made from a technical point of view. And sometimes you have to put your foot down and say, I need you to do it this way. But they're few and far between. And I like to think that I failed if I've reached that point, because I should be able to explain my ideas to the team so that they understand it and come along with me. So yeah, telling the team what to do instead of bringing them along,
I think it's human nature that when we get promoted, you feel like you've been put up on this pedestal, you've been elevated above the team, and you have to now have all the answers. You have to be the one that's confident, and it's almost that Hollywood image of leadership, leading the charge. And the reality is you don't have to be. And if you do try and be the person with all the answers, you're actually holding back everyone else. You're holding back their growth. You're limiting what they can do. And actually the right way is to be stepping back and trying to let the others come forward and have the answers.
Absolutely.
And it feels quite unnatural to sit in a meeting and try and speak last. Or at least speak last with your ideas, and instead say, this is the problem we have. How are we going to approach it? And then to share your idea last after everyone else has had the chance. And
I think I find my squad will tell you I'm still struggling with that one.
You and me both. I don't think ever we get fully past it, because it's it's always the human nature. We want to present our ideas. We're excited by them. We're invested in them, so we want to share them and get them out.
Absolutely.
We have that human nature to feel that we've got to take the leadership role, and it's really hard to get past that, isn't it?
But it is.
Do you have any tips on how we can?
So one of the things that I try and remember is that not everybody has the same experience that I have. So a lot of the ideas that I have, certainly from a technical point of view, are based on the things I learned while I was an ACU member, and all the reading that I did, and all of the programming that I've done, and the mistakes that I've made. And the thing to remember, I think, is that the other people haven't necessarily gone on that same journey, and they might have gone on a similar journey, and they might have learned different things, and they might have learned something that you haven't learned. So I think if you're not talking to your team about how they might solve the problem you're looking at, you're potentially missing something you haven't thought of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And right from the mentor developers up to including now when we have an intern, I've always encouraged junior people to come and progress. So while I was running Naked Element, we had apprentices, we had junior developers. They came on, they spent a bit of time with us. We used to do work experience people. At least two of the work experience people that came to work for Naked Element, one of them decided not to go to university based on his experience and walked straight into a job, and is now a head of at Naked Wines. And another young lady who came off a work experience went on to do a computer science degree at Cambridge. So I quite enjoy seeing people sort of come and work alongside me and my squad or my team at the time, and then go on and do great things.
Yeah, it drives me mad when I see supposed leaders and experienced managers that, whether it's CTOs, VPs, directors of engineering, say, if we hire a junior developer, they're negative for 12 months, and we have to dedicate some seniors' time to doing this, and that takes the seniors away from their job. I think it's incredibly arrogant and wrong, because, as you say, I've learned so much from junior developers that have walked a different path to us, who've had a different learning experience, and particularly now, I'm nearly 30 years after I went to uni, getting on for 30 years since I started my career, they've had a totally different start to their career, totally different experience. I can learn from them, and I have learned from them. Every year throughout my career, I've learned something from a junior developer that I've worked with. And I hope I've taught them lots of things along the way too. But I've learned from every single one of them. Even when I've been teaching them something, I've learned something from the questions they've asked, or I've learned something from them saying, oh, I read about this, because they tend to be enthusiastic. So I think it's a real mistake not to realise that everybody has something to teach us. Everyone, as you say, has been on that different journey, has a different background, has a different lens to view the world through. And even if they can't immediately teach us something, they may ask us a question because that different lens, that different experience, that really provokes a completely different view of the world and a completely different way of thinking about a problem or technology. So, yeah, I think juniors are hugely underrated.
Very much so.
Cool. So, not stepping back and delegating. Any other tips on how somebody can avoid doing that, or anything else they can put into action, or any stories of hard-learned experience hard-won experience you can share from there?
So most of my hard won experience in leadership and other places is going off half cocked. So sometimes you see a problem and you want to fix it, or somebody you perceive that somebody is causing a problem, and you sort of dive in and say, well, why did you do this? Why did you do it that way? And 9 times out of 10, they've either got a really good explanation about why they did it that way, and it changes your mind, or what it is you think they've done in the first place they haven't done. So I think it's really important to make sure that before you, for want of a better term, tackle someone or disagree with someone or something, that you have all of the background information, that you don't go off half-cocked. And I think it's important to build respect, that when you do get it wrong, you say that you've got it wrong. It does feel awful because of what you were saying earlier about you expected to know everything, and you expected to know what the right thing is, and then you've got it wrong, and you've got to go and tell somebody that you didn't know everything and that you didn't get it right. But I find, it may be cliche, but I find that does actually get other people to build more respect in you, and make you more approachable.
Yeah, absolutely. If we admit our mistakes, it's so much easier to respect and like someone that comes to you and goes, I made a mistake, I got it wrong. I think the other lesson that I've tried to apply to this is to, instead of going and saying, why did you do this? Try and find a way of, because that can almost, if you phrase it wrong, sound like an accusation. You've done something wrong. Try and find a way of approaching it from I'm curious, what was the reasoning behind this? So if you turn it into a question, then you don't put the other person on the defense, and you've not set yourself up for looking like an idiot if there's a damn good reason why they did it. Instead, you've been curious rather than attacking them.
Yeah, absolutely. I try and do that in pull requests. Can you explain it? I'm not really following it. Yeah.
Cool. Anywhere else you apply other than code requests and being curious about things?
Being an engineer and wanting to solve problems is about being curious about things, isn't it? I mean, a lot of what we do is driven by product and requirements, but improving the systems and the way they run and the way things are maintainable doesn't normally come via the product or requirements route. It comes from understanding the system and seeing the problem. So yes, I'm always curious about where we run the software and how the software runs and how it interacts. And those curiosities normally lead to changes that we might want to make, and improvements that we can make, and making things easier to maintain.
I find it also helps to be curious about the domain and curious about why are we doing this for the business? What's the outcome? What's the value add? How is it going to help people? I don't know what domains you worked in apart from Haven, since we kind of talked 20 odd years ago, but I found it very weird working in finance for a few years, where I was fascinated by that. So I was curious to learn about options and how the pricing worked, and to learn about CFDs and spread bets and all the different areas. But I was always amazed at how many software engineers weren't. Then that put them at a disadvantage, because they couldn't then speak to the product owners, they couldn't speak to the traders in the finance case, and they didn't really understand what we're doing. And that I always felt was a mistake. And I think something that, again, is quite valuable for leadership is to encourage that curiosity in people, so they go and be interested in the domain, not just the technical side. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's important. I'm one of the developers that struggled in finance because I wasn't interested in a lot of financial instruments. So when I was at Barcap and Lehman's, I struggled to get excited about it. So although I did talk to the traders and I did understand it was certainly a struggle. I think throughout my career, I've been predominantly interested in the technology and how it can be applied, more so than in the domain that I've been working in. Obviously, if anybody at Haver's listening, that's not the case now, I promise.
You're fascinated by caravans now.
Well, this is it. So while I'm not necessarily particularly excited about the caravans themselves, looking at the way that the parks run, looking at the way that we sell the holidays and we promote the holidays and the different options and the other systems we can talk to, and the way that the ownership of the caravans works and it's managed. While I was working with owners, I was involved in developing a complete new purchasing model. So it was really good to get excited about that. Or I did get excited about that. I could really talk about the domain back in those days, and even down to simple things like we're developing a new system which allows you to maintain a list of regular guests, so that every time you check out from a holiday, instead of having to put in the guests that are coming with you, you can select from a list of people you've been on holiday with before. And while that sounds quite simple, when you think about all the different systems that we've got and where things are stored, it then becomes quite a complex problem. So being able to explore the domain about how you match guests from different systems and that sort of thing, I found fascinating. So yeah, as a leader, you do need to be able to translate the business into the requirements and the code that your engineers are going to build.
Yeah, I just want to pull it. I've joked about caravans a little bit. I just want to pull the thread with Haven. I've just pulled Haven up. And so Haven is part of a leisure group that, if I'm reading this right, turnover was 1.1 billion. So public company. It's easy in a lot of tech and then social media to start thinking that do anything interesting tech, you've got to be at one of the FANG companies or Magnificent Seven or whatever. It's the trending name of the day. But we forget that in things like, a little caravan holiday company can still be $1 billion business, or £1 billion in this case. That's going to be about $1.5 billion. Still a hell of a business, still significant and doing something, very noticeable. So let's talk a little bit more about the book then. What are some of the chapters in the book? What can somebody expect if they go ahead and buy it and read it, Paul?
So if you open the book, you'll see that there's a fairly lengthy introduction from me about my journey and how I got to where I am. And then if I just look at some of the chapters here, I start off by exploring what it is to be a team lead. So I talk to lots of different people, lots of other team leads and other people within business. And I talk to ChatGPT and I come up with a definition of team leadership, which is basically taking a lot of people in the same direction to achieve a common goal together. And then I explain about how talking to your team is about building relationships. And while you can encourage your team to like each other, they might not necessarily. And there are different ways to get people to interact. But all of my teams, we work together and we play together. So I don't mean that we're out in the evening having a pint, but regularly we'll get together and we'll play a game and we'll have a bit of fun. We have an open Teams channel where within reason anything goes, and we chat about what we're interested in as well as the work that we're doing. Some people take part, some people don't, but it's always a bit of fun. I mean, we were posting in memes about AI earlier and having a bit of a laugh while we're working as well. And then I also talk in the book about, as I said before, about doing the work isn't the only way to get satisfaction. And that sort of started off, my initial thoughts with that were about the things that we do to help seeing other people achieve. But when I came to sit down and write the book, I needed more. So I started talking to lots of different stakeholders and they came and told me the things that a team lead really does for them. And I talked about how, as well as fulfilling those stakeholder needs and how good that can feel, I also talked about how important it is to maintain your technical skills and other bits and pieces. So I'm hoping I can give some practical advice there for people to feel better about what they're doing. And remembering to delegate, we've talked a lot about that. A lot of the lead engineers that I work with who then go on to become team leads, the first thing that they struggle with is putting the work down and telling someone else to do it or asking somebody else to do it. So I suggest that once you're in that position, by default you delegate everything. And then as you learn, you can perhaps bring back a bit more or delegate it to different people. So it's really important to make sure that the team does stuff. For one thing, you don't want everything in your head. You're a team, okay? Anybody could be, I hope they're not, but anybody could be hit by a bus tomorrow, or you could be hit by a bus tomorrow, and it takes that knowledge away. I talk about picking disagreements. I think two of the most important things to bear in mind when there is disagreement at work is firstly whether it's worth disagreeing about. Okay, what colour a button it is probably isn't worth two developers, two engineers deciding. You go and ask somebody in design what colour they want it to be. So disagree about the things that are worth disagreeing about, and also whether or not it's your disagreement. So I have some fairly strong views about how infrastructure should be, sometimes how other squads should do things, but remembering to step back, and it's not my problem, it's their problem, and just sort of letting them get on with it. But it's a balance. There are times when I've intervened and people have appreciated it. There are far more times when I've intervened and people haven't. And then the last chapter in the book is about seeing the bigger picture. So often engineers, especially when they're talking to other squads and new requirements come up, they can be asked to do things without considering whether or not they should do them, or what the wider impact is going to be if you do them. So just remembering to take a step back, ask more questions of the right people, and try and understand what the impact's going to be before diving in to do something, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's a great one, because, again, it comes back, I think, to that domain knowledge of understanding what the business strategy is. So quite often then you can step back and say, well, do we really want to do that? Is that the most useful thing we could do? And the other way I've seen this play out is it's very easy if somebody's senior, and I've seen this in a small startup where the CEO wandered past a junior developer's desk and went, oh, that looks good. Wouldn't it be really cool if we could do this? And that junior developer heard the CEO say, wouldn't it be cool if we could do X? And he rushed off and spent 2 weeks doing it. Now, the CEO wasn't really thinking. He was just voicing an opinion, not really thinking about it. He jet-lagged recently off a flight back from the US. And that became like, you have to go and build this urgently. It's the highest priority thing. Drop everything. That wasn't what he intended. So it was his failure as a leader not to have carefully thought about his words. But equally as much, the junior developer should really have paused a little bit and said, is this the highest priority thing? Should I be dropping everything before I invest 2 weeks and going away to build this feature that, as it turned out, nobody wanted, and the CEO forgot he'd even mentioned it 2 days later? So it's an interesting one from both sides. Failure of leadership not to manage your words and think about that impression, and a failure of the junior not to just pause and view that big picture. So yeah, fully agree on the big picture. And if you're a leader, think carefully about your words. Choose what you say.
Absolutely.
I'm going to pick at another thread there. You mentioned about keeping your tech skills in.
Yes.
Now, I strongly suspect that's something we've both done, because we both started from that very technical background and learning C and C++. But I always end up finding myself in disagreements with a lot of people, as I don't think you need to be technical to be a good manager of a software engineering team. What are your thoughts on that, Paul?
It depends. Well, it depends what the scope of your. I mean, you use the word management there, but it depends what the scope of your leadership is. I think the team lead, if they're a technical team lead, as I am, they need to understand at the very least the architecture and be able to understand how the different services and the different components fit together. And I think you need a certain amount of technical knowledge for that, especially when you're talking about high availability and that sort of thing. You need to know how things work and whether you're going to get deadlocks in places. One of the things I discuss in the book is that I have had in the past, and developers hate this, but you need it to build trust, I think, initially. But one of the rules I've had is that I want to look at every pull request before it's merged. And that was when I was early in the particular teams, and I wanted to build up that confidence level with my team members. But I couldn't look at it. I couldn't look at a PR if I didn't have the technical knowledge. And often the engineers within the team, they disagree on the approach to certain things between each other, not just between me and them, but between each other. And I'm not in a position to mediate if I don't understand the technology. And if something's taking longer than perhaps it should to develop, again, if I don't understand the technology, I might not understand why the engineer is telling me it's taking longer. So I think it's important. But I think in my case, at least, that needs to be balanced with my initial feelings of self-worth, which are producing stuff technically, producing software. So there's a certain amount of me that needs to keep up to date with that stuff as well.
Yeah, I think I've come at it from that point of view because I feel I learned a lot about managing people almost at the beginning of my career from somebody that was non-technical, that had never done more than program a few formulas in an Excel spreadsheet, but who had managed software engineers and who had done so with the realization that they didn't understand the technical side. So what they had to do is, as you say, that kind of facilitate that conversation, to encourage the right people to step forward and share their views. And they had to build that level of trust with their engineers in a different way, so that they could then mediate and so that they could then ask intelligent questions about scheduling and so on. And I think I learned actually a lot from them that helped early in my career and helped when I managed people. So I always lean towards you don't need to be technical, but I think it definitely helps to be. As you say, it helps build that credibility and it helps you got the technical depth. And I think, as you hinted at there, it can hinder a little bit as well, because you can be far more tempted to step in and try and do it, or step in and I'm going to review the code and, I don't like that. I'm going to ask questions now, so I'm going to poke at that. Which again, I think it also depends when you're managing a team. If you're managing a whole bunch of, say, junior engineers who are very early in their career, say less than a year, you probably do need to be a bit more hands-on and mentoring them and supporting them. On the other hand, if you're managing a bunch of engineers who are 20 years, 30 years into their career, very, very deep technical expertise. So let's say I was managing a team of people who are building infrastructure that underlies Kubernetes, not deploying it, but actually building infrastructure for Kubernetes. I wouldn't have a clue where to start. I can build a container engine at the basics, but it'd be way more technical than I am in that domain. So I would want to get out of the way and take more of that hands-off approach and just ask intelligent questions, hopefully. Cool. So final thing then to wrap up, as we've talked a little bit about the book, you mentioned AI, the hot topic of the day.
Yes.
What's your feelings on AI? What is it bringing to software? What are the pros and cons?
It's good. Yeah. So some of the circles that I've been moving in for the last few years, there are a lot of people worried that AI is going to come along and take their jobs away. Not just in software engineering, but in all sorts of places. I suppose I feel two things predominantly. One is that new technology has always come along and taken people's jobs away. So we don't have tanners anymore. We don't have knocker uppers. We have alarm clocks.
How old are you, Paul?
I'm trying to use an extreme example to make my point. And 25 years ago, there was no such thing as a social media manager. So while there are jobs which are perhaps being replaced by technology, there are new jobs that we've never thought of before. I suppose perhaps in the context of our AI prompt engineer is probably going to be one of the new big jobs.
Yeah, or to your point, SRE, DevOps. I won't get on my high horse about DevOps, but DevOps engineers didn't exist 20 years ago. Data scientist, data engineer, all of these are new jobs that have been created in the field since the start, even if DevOps shouldn't be a role, but we won't go there.
Well, we have software engineers, platform engineers, and site reliability engineers. So we've got a nice even mix. So I think it's just the natural march of progress, and for all the people that job perhaps doesn't exist anymore, there will be new jobs. So that's the first thing. And I was a reluctant adopter of AI in software engineering, just because I didn't make the time to sit down and learn how to use it. But I have done in the last 6 months. So we started off with Copilot, which I discovered was actually predicting the code I was writing quite well, so it became quite a useful tool. And more recently with Claude, where I can sit down and ask it about my code base and ask it to create things for me and to change things. And I can see how it is making me more productive and how it can make other engineers more productive. I think it's a positive thing. I think we're a long way from self-conscious artificial intelligence. The Terminator stuff that people seem to be worried about, and I think it's something that should be embraced and encouraged. But obviously, we need the guardrails as well, just in case.
Yeah, I think we're a long way from AGI. I think a lot of advancements we've had in AI in the last 20 years because it's not just LLMs that have been hyped recently, but a lot of other ways that have been incredibly useful and certainly make me more productive. I don't think AI is replacing software engineers anytime soon. I think the demand for software engineers is going to keep growing. There's, as you say, it allows us to be more productive, but there's always been more software development work than a company could afford to hire software engineers for, and any company I've worked for. So we should just do more.
Yes.
Cool.
I don't think it helps when. So I think it was the Oxford English Dictionary recently had added vibe coding as the word of the year, and Radio 4 then described that pretty much as a way of developing software engineers so that anybody can using natural language, so that they didn't need software engineers anymore. I don't think comments like that are helpful or accurate.
I agree, and I was pretty horrified actually that some fairly well-known figures like Gene Kim have published a book on vibe coding that kind of seems to support that view. I haven't read it yet, but reading some of the reviews, I kind of expected better from few figures like that, so I was quite surprised at that one. Back to your book, Paul. Let's
Yes.
say the cover again. Where can anyone find it? Where can they buy it?
It's
How can they get in touch with you?
Okay, so you can get in touch with me on my website, paulgrenyer.com. Nice and easy to remember. The book's available through Amazon in Kindle format, hardback and softback. And if people drop me an email directly, then I can arrange for a signed copy as well.
Awesome. We'll put all those links in the show notes below. All right. Thanks very much, Paul. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Okay. Great to be here. I've enjoyed it. Thanks, John.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Coding Chats. If you did, please like and subscribe. And feel free to check out these other videos on a similar topic.